Look closely at these rural communities. Behind the stunning geography lies a severe reality of isolation. For decades, a crumbling infrastructure and a massive wave of youth unemployment left towns like this completely disconnected from economic opportunity. Compare that to the capital, Kathmandu. Under Prime Minister Vikram, the regime insulated itself within palatial government estates. The national budget was steadily redirected to political loyalists, funding a lavish lifestyle entirely cut off from the rural poverty outside its gates. Facing rising complaints from a frustrated youth, the government decided to pull the plug. They ordered a nationwide total blackout of all social media. No posts, no messages, no digital dissent. By attempting to digitally blind the younger generation, the regime made a massive miscalculation. Stripped of their screens, the youth had no choice but to step outside, talk face-to-face, and physically organize in the dark. It started quietly. Two local youths, Sagar and Rita, began gathering their peers under the cover of night in the village square. They shared grievances, drafted demands, and built a grassroots coalition without a single text message. The government's response was swift and brutal. Heavily armed security forces were deployed to the village, launching an unprovoked attack directly into the unarmed crowd. When the smoke cleared the next morning, 19 teenagers were dead. Archival accounts from the village capture the raw devastation. Grieving mothers and local farmers described a night of sheer panic, pulling bodies from the square while the police locked down the perimeter. The murder of 19 students did not silence the villages. It eradicated their fear. A localized protest against censorship was immediately forged into an irreversible blood pact for an entire generation. Outrage bypassed the digital blackout through word of mouth, spreading geographically from the mountains straight into the dense urban center. Thousands of protesters flooded the capital's brick-lined streets. They didn't strike randomly. Protesters strategically targeted the physical symbols of regime corruption, setting fire to corporate media houses that had hidden the truth, and tearing through luxury hotels funded by embezzled state money. The siege ultimately reached the central government and parliament buildings, bringing the fight to the doorstep. State security pushback resulted in massive property destruction and the total collapse of institutional order. The battle for Kathmandu exacted a devastating toll. By the time the government forces retreated, 75 additional martyrs had been killed fighting in the streets. The volume of blood spilled and the scale of physical ruins made one thing clear: the old system could not be tweaked or reformed. It had to be torn out by the roots. Desperate to decapitate the uprising, regime loyalists captured Sagar. He was thrown into prison and subjected to intense torture to break the movement's momentum. But the leadership was decentralized. Rita kept the revolution alive by building an underground VPN network, a hidden digital tunnel that bypassed the government blocks and allowed the resistance to coordinate nationwide without detection. Sagar's eventual release brought a specific friction. His time as a prisoner had transformed him into a powerful martyr figure with rising personal ambitions, which collided directly with Rita's insistence that the revolution remain a leaderless, collective effort. They resolved the fracture by establishing a strict, transparent leadership cabinet. Every decision required consensus, forcing individual egos to submit to the accountability of the group. Surviving this internal split demonstrated that the movement's organizational structure was stronger than the personalities leading it. They had built a framework capable of resolving conflict without falling back into the top-down control of the past. Vikram's regime eventually collapsed under the weight of the national strike. The youth leaders immediately stepped into the vacuum, forming a new political entity, the Nepali Dal. This timeline chart maps out their 25-year master plan. Reclaimed funds were redirected into massive industrial expansion. On the education and tech tracks, they built world-class universities while pushing high-speed internet into remote villages. The rise in rural connectivity intersected perfectly with national GDP. This master plan introduced structural roadblocks against the old style of rule. By making every state transaction public and decentralizing capital, the new government stripped away the secret accounts and patronage networks that previous regimes used to consolidate power. Years later, the results are visible across the geography. The isolated communities evolved into thriving, green rural hubs, seamlessly integrated with brightly lit, modernized cities. The public gathered by the thousands at Tundikhel, an open, peaceful victory rally where Sagar and Rita stepped up to address a fully liberated public. In their final public interviews, both leaders reflected on the empty chairs in the crowd, honoring the friends and students who paid the ultimate price to clear the path. This new Nepal exists because a generation refused the status quo, paid for it with the lives of their peers, and spent 2 decades building the replacement. Their vision rose from deep suppression to become the national standard.